morning, everyone, again. I'm delighted to be in the company of Maritime Singapore's key stakeholders and my very long-time friends, Caroline Yang on the left. We have Ms. Beng Tan in the middle, and we have Mr. Kenneth Lim on my left, representing the Lion City's leading maritime lighthouses, the SSA, the SMF, and the MPA. Thank you again, heartfelt thanks again for accepting the invite and being on the stage with us today. My team tells me that I need visual aids. I confuse people. So can I have the graph up, please? So you will see a fancy graph coming up shortly. I guess Andrew is working on it, and there it is. Yeah? Not complicated. I am a banker. Okay? So it is not a MRT or a tube diagram. What it is a chart mapping out the top maritime centers in the world according to the Xinhua Baltic, which has created an international shipping center development index, or as we call it, ISCDI, composing of 16 different measurements, incorporating factors such as port throughputs, government transparency, and obviously maritime services like shipping finance. So to address today's topic at hand, I thought, we should start with something, which is the main question here. Will Singapore be the natural home for the next generation of shipping conglomerates, keeping in mind the chart behind? Can I have a very quick show of hands who have a resounding yes to this question? Resounding yes. Thank you. The naysayers who do not think. It's a safe environment, come on. Wow, okay. Maybes, maybe yes, maybe not. I like the guys who raise their hands on all threes. All right, okay, I think we don't need to guess anymore. We have an expert panel, but just to get your interest started, the question on hand is that will Singapore continue to be the home and attract more shipping conglomerates? So what we start with is a bit of more context, how I'm going to run it, because we have only 30 minutes, now probably 25. We're going to divide today's session in past, present, and future. Firstly, on the past, I would love to hear more on how Singapore was able to retain this position consecutively at the first place for last 11 years. Secondly, on the present, there is fierce up-and-coming challenges to Singapore's title. There's London, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Dubai. What are Singapore's challenges and concerns today in maintaining this position? And on future, how can Singapore fend off this competition and overcome its challenges to retain its top spot? So I will start with the past, and probably I can't think of anyone better to get the ball rolling than MPA. Would you like to share with the importance and relevance of Singapore as a key maritime hub and the role of MPA that it has played?
Thank you, Abhishek, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Andrew, for inviting us here. Congrats on your 23rd anniversary. I'm sitting among the leaders here, so I'm only 7 years in MPA, so not the most qualified person to speak. But as I reflect on this question, actually, I think there are three factors that I think I'd like to share with the audience. One, of course, I think is the location. So I think the location of Singapore serving the world as a trade routes, and of course, in the past, then making Singapore the location for ship owners, operators to be here, trying to maintain our cost low. And I think this location also have then served us to become a transshipment hub, a bunkering hub, a seafarer changing hub. So many of these are associated with location. So I think if Singapore can continue to leverage on our only inheritance, which is our location, then I think we can continue to stay. If not, I think like some of the audience say, Singapore will lose our position. The second element I think is important is livelihood. I think when many of the ship owners, operators that are here, I think they are all looking at making business work for them. It is about livelihood. So I think that is all about where Singapore government, together with the industries, have to make this livelihood work for every one of us. both from a Singapore perspective, from a government, is making sure that we have enough jobs, of course, for our talent, our generations, and our citizens and our population, but also jobs and livelihood for the people, the companies who have set up in Singapore. I think that is making and top of our agenda in our everyday discussion with the ministry to make sure that the environment in Singapore will be conducive for livelihood. And the last element is really about, I think it's about people, it's leadership. So I think, and in this regard, I think, and Caroline and Beng, they have seen through this industry for very long. The leadership at different tier, at the government, how forward planning the government can be, will continue to be very important to ensure that we stay on top of the game. But equally important is the leadership at the industry level, advocating for the changes that are required to make Singapore competitive, and the leadership in bringing the new set of talent that is coming into the workforce. So I think I would summarize this as the 3L, the location, the livelihood, and leadership.
Thank you, the 3Ls. Thanks a lot. Beng, you were Kenneth's predecessor as MPA, as Assistant Chief Executive. Would you like to build on anything that Kenneth has said, or perhaps touch a bit on your current role with SMF, given its mission to bridge the gap between private and public space?
Okay. Well, first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you. I think many of whom I've worked for a very long time, for giving us the support and allowing us to reach where we are today. Without your support, I don't think we'll be anywhere near being considered to be a good location for maritime business. Many of you know MPA, and I will not add further to what Kenneth has said. I think he has done a very comprehensive outline of what MPA has done for the past decades. What I'd like to talk about is on SMF, Singapore Maritime Foundation, less known, but hopefully doing a great job in serving the community. Singapore Maritime Foundation, or SMF as we call, is actually founded by MPA. And the objective of doing it is to augment MPA's work in reaching out to the community. So if you ask me what is SMF, SMF is both a connector, a builder, a facilitator, and an aggregator. And let me explain why I come up with such a description. I like to think of SMF as a connector and as a facilitator to the industry by giving you one example. All of us know that we are actually going through a lot of transition. Some are much more difficult than others, but all of us know that we will have to somehow or other win some of these transitions, because otherwise we will not be in the business. So one of the elements that SMF did was actually to come up with a tripartite advisory panel, and this is comprising the industry leaders, the unions, as well as the regulatory authorities. The question before us is, what should we do in order to, in a way, embrace or ride along with some of these transitions that are about to come? And an area that is very important is about how do you upskill your people and how do you actually retain talent. So one of the outcomes of this group is that in addressing upskilling and talent, perhaps we should actually look at the various classification, and we classify this as domain knowledge, digital, as well as soft skills. Domain knowledge is critical because it is what you are trained to do, and it must be enduring, but it must be agile enough to take into consideration what the world is expecting you to change. Yeah, and then, of course, digital skills will be one of the disruption that's coming on and how we should be actually addressing it. And then soft skills, which people take for granted, is actually very important. The outcome of this is, I just want to share one, which is we then decided that we will work with the National University of Singapore to come up with a course on data analytics and data science. And this course is fine-tuned to actually address the needs of the maritime sector. And we've started a pilot 3 days ago with 30 participants from 15 shipping companies. And once this is successful, we will then actually roll out to the rest of the community. And we would actually encourage the shipping companies to sign on for this course by actually enrolling their staff. And it is very important because in every company, there are people who are of age 40, and some of these people do not know about data analytics and data science. But if you look at their career pathway, they have another 20 years ahead. You need to train the people, otherwise they become obsolete and then become redundant, and you have to lay them off, and that is not reflective of actually a good employer. So just to highlight that these are some of the areas they are doing for SMF. Another area will be on talents, which I will elaborate further.
Thank you. Thanks, Beng. Very comprehensively put. So we'll probably move on to Caroline. Caroline, do you have anything from a seasoned ship owner perspective, Singaporean, to attest to what they have said or add?
2 points. First, they have mentioned and they have really articulated what makes Singapore tick. I think all of that, you go to, shipping is international by its very name. It's international, and many of us have operations in other parts of the world. And I think what Singapore stands out in the position as SSA and Vice Chair of ICS, I've been given the opportunity to go to various jurisdictions. The one that stands out for me in Singapore is rules-based. We are so certain in our rules. When you do a business, it's good to have that certainty, that clarity, that predictability. I really feel that stands very important for us. The second point, which Beng T has articulated about the future, but I think we have a very educated workforce, and one that is standing us in good stead. But on these 2 points, again, we have to be careful also about the challenges.
Very well put. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So I think probably I'll stay on you while I'm at it, and probably move to the present, which is today, and talk a little bit about challenges, pressures, and obstacles that Singapore is facing. So on moving on to the present, we have heard a lot about Singapore's strength. It actually scores 96 on 100 on the ISCDI, 96 on 100. But what are the challenges Singapore faces today, as you feel, especially with reference to the other up-and-coming centers, ports like Shanghai, the closest competitor, London, both with ISCDI scores of 82 on 100? I'm very keen to hear your thoughts, not only through the lens of SSA, obviously, but also through the perspective of your role as Vice Chair of the International Chamber of Shipping.
Yeah, so I'll share with you just my observations, and I want to bring in 2 places. Shanghai and Dubai. These are the 2 places actually I'm really eyeballing. And, I went to Lingang. I don't know whether anyone of you have gone. And there is a 10-year plan for Lingang. And I went to 2 conferences last year, one in Lingang and one in Shanghai. And I will tell you, they have the land, they have the people, they have the resources, they have the government support. Everyone is just putting in money. The government is very sure that they want to promote the port. And when I speak to some leaders, and they tell me it is not if Shanghai will take over Singapore, it is when Shanghai will take over Singapore. So that really, okay, I'm going to run faster and make sure I will try and delay that inevitable, if that is an inevitable. So there is a lot of support given to these countries. And the second one is Dubai. It is really coming up, and they have so many advantages. They're really sitting between Asia and Europe. And we are getting expensive. Singapore is so expensive right now. The cost of living is high. The ability to get passes is difficult. There's so many criteria that you have to navigate. And government tells us you cannot expect Singapore to be the cheapest, and we have to be expensive. I think that's true to a certain extent, but I think you have to be careful about that, because we can see that the companies are moving to Dubai. They are not scaling down, but when there is an attrition of staff, they are not replacing. and they are scaling up in Dubai. So I think these are challenges that we have to be very serious about and look at how we can do better in Singapore.
Thank you. Very well put, China and Dubai. I'll move to probably Beng and Kenneth. I know, both are Singaporeans. Singaporean education system is perfectionist. There are 4 marks short, Beng. Kenneth, 4 marks short. 96 on 100 is not good enough. What about the missing 4 marks? What do you think that Singapore should be doing in terms of protecting, obviously, the impeding threat of losing the spot through 2 of the competitive stations, but also what should we be doing or what are we lacking right now that takes 4 marks away?
Well, even our education system has changed. Yeah, you must have different pathways to achieve your goal. And I think I always think that there is 2 things. One is things that you can control. We will try our best to make it better, whether it's manpower, talent development, campus, in terms of business costs. We try to make sure that that can be controlled as much as possible. Then there is the other element that is that things that you cannot control, then you make sure that you preempt and you try to see where's the relevance of Singapore towards that. But for this ranking exercise, I know that some of these scores deals with number of cranes to your terminals and all that. That actually has implication because of the size. So if you have a size of Singapore and you just have X number of cranes and you compare that to a country with, like Caroline mentioned, so much space, and therefore the number of cranes to service the terminals is X times to the power of something. That is something that I don't think we have our limitation, but we must make do with whatever resources, leaders in this room, and to collectively work out how best we can then serve the community. Beng?
Yeah. Okay. So my take is that in a country that is land scarce, labor scarce, it is actually very difficult, to please everybody. And in a way, we will have to work much more smarter and much more deliberate in some of the things that we do, building up the basics while keeping an eye on the future and what the future will bring. So when we look at this chart, or at least when I look at these statistics, it is not a matter of being a perfectionist, but it is a matter of how best we can actually serve the industry, what are the areas that we are lacking, and as Kenneth said, there are some areas that we know that we will take a long time to build up because the market is just not here. So, but notwithstanding that, we will have to see how we could actually identify some of these areas and collectively with the industry work together.
Thank you. While we are probably speaking to you, Beng, maybe we should move on to the future. And one of the points that came up, I think, earlier by you when you were alluding on the first topic in the past, and then Caroline brought up the topic of attrition. So one thing is talent, and I think one of the main goals of SMF is on talent, which SCB and SMF have worked together, obviously, and grown it in terms of early stage. I would like to get your views on what more is being done. If there is being any particular action to control this attrition or get more talent from overseas or groom internally.
So one of the areas that SMF works very closely on would be in the area of talent. And in a way, talent is not unique to Singapore. Talent is something that I hear from companies, when I visit them overseas. And of course, the usual feedback is that you cannot get the young ones to join the industry. And that is going to be terrible because if you do not get your fair share of talent into the industry, then how do you expect your industry to grow? So, and based on all this feedback, we decided that SMF should take a much more deliberate role in building the talent that is required for the industry in Singapore. And if we are able to do that well, not only will we serve the industry, but we are also serving the Singaporeans because eventually they are all intellectual capital. You know, they are exportable service. They can actually work anywhere in the world. So that becomes, you know, a calling for SMF. When we look at the industry, in particular the youth, we decided that we would take a life cycle approach. We need to start from the young and then to the time when they are in the university. So we came up with what we call a framework. And this framework works along this line. First, how do you attract them into the industry? Because the industry is not known to them. The industry is only seen by them as a port, a shipyard, and the ships at a distance. How do you actually unveil this facade and show them that there's a whole ecosystem behind this industry? So we need to attract them. Then in attracting them, we need to engage them. And then, of course, we need to show that there's growth path in the industry. You know, you're joining an industry that will help you to grow and not an industry that stagnates your career. So under this, and we work in collaboration with the industry, and that is actually very fantastic because we really need the industry to work with us to build the talent. So under the pillar on engage, what we have is to offer them scholarships, to bring them on board, offer them scholarships, give them a good learning experience. Inherent in this scholarship, and along with other programs, we also want to actually instill more experiential learning. That means we work with the companies to offer internships. Internships are rich experience that the students will need because once they have a very good experience, they will stay with the industry. And for the company, it allows you to start eyeballing your future workforce ahead. And you're actually nurturing them ahead of time. We also then work on what we call intellectual stimulation. And that's where we also come up with case challenges. We ask the companies to give us the problem statements, and then we actually then invite the students across the universities, across disciplines to participate. And thank you, Abhishek, because one of the challenge statements actually came from SCB. The beauty about all these competitions is also that you create a ground-up movement. When the students win, they post on LinkedIn. And that actually create awareness for the industry at large. Yeah. Then we also speak about engaging, how do you engage them? And for this, we actually have two areas. One is campus talk. So we bring the industry to the campus to talk to the students. And also we bring the students to the companies to show that working in the industry doesn't really mean working in a very obscure place in Singapore, but it could be working in a nice office with good colleagues around. So that is also what we want to change that visual take about what Maritime is. To a certain extent, we are quite happy with the outcome that we've achieved so far. The industry have stepped forward. This year, we have given out 63 scholarships worth 1.8 million, close to 1.8 million to the students. And beyond maritime students, we're also attracting data science students, IT students, and these are actually required for the students, for the industry, because you need a cross-discipline. We also want to actually make sure that the workforce that Singapore churns out fits the needs of the industry. We want it to be relevant, skills that are relevant to the industry. And we also want to make sure that we churn out students that show leadership and they are agile in their thinking. And hence we also came up with a program whereby the students themselves organize an event for themselves. So we call this the Maritime Youth Dialogue, whereby we bring students across the various universities and they organize an event. And in organizing the event, they are also spreading the word about maritime. And again, what the industry collaborates with us is speakers. The industry come up with speakers, and they also then introduce themselves to the industry. So on the average, we get about 200 students across various disciplines to attend such events.
Thank you. Very comprehensive. So one of the pillars is talent. As you can see, it's in safe hands. and is being addressed. A lot of progress has already been made. I think one of the other parts is, Caroline, Singapore is world known for a bunkering hub, and probably you've been, and Hong Lam has been an important player and a long-standing player in this space. What are your views about position of Singapore as a bunkering hub?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm really in the bunkering sector, so this is something that's very close to my heart. We have been number one since 1988. That is quite a feat, and this year I think we will hit a record number of 52 million tons, I think, yeah, the way the numbers are going. And the reason why we have been able to maintain our position is, of course, the whole ecosystem. I mean, it is built from scratch and is slowly built up. But I think, like I said, about the rule space and trying to have this integrity of bunkering in Singapore. And I really feel that the game changer was in 2017 when MPA took the courage, I want to use the word courage, to have this MFM as mandatory, the mass flow metering system. I started with MPA on this test bathing and ExxonMobil in 2010. It took us 7 years to go through the trials, the tests, and we were the first 2 vessels to be certified mass flow meter to do custody transfer of bunkers. But that journey was very difficult, and it was faced with so many opposition. And the opposition is very loud. I will tell you, when 2010, the idea for test bathing came up, only one hand rose up, and that's me. The rest, everyone wants to be status quo. So it took about 7 years, and we told the government, you have to make it mandatory. Then it will be a level playing field. And they were informed very clearly that if you do that, you are going to lose 30% of the volume. People will move to elsewhere. And when 2017 came in, we had a record year in 2017. So it took courage because they expected a reduction. People tell them 30%. MPA calculated, they think it's 10%. And they still took the courage to implement this. So that is the courage of implementing a process that will improve the integrity and the transparency of lifting bunkers in Singapore. And you will see that in the EBDN, which I hope will also be mandatory soon. And that will also increase the transparency and the whole system of lifting bunkers in Singapore. Now, we talk about what do I see in the future. That's something that worries me, because we are going to see a multi-fuel in the future. It's not going to be one type of fuel, and one type of fuel is always cheaper to do so. You load one time, you can discharge to many vessels. Now you have to have different vessels for different fuels, and they cannot mix, and that worries me. And if I were to take LNG as an example, there are about maybe 50 plus LNG bunker tankers in the world. In Singapore, we only have 3. What does that say of me? In Singapore, talking about Singapore. Are we going to hold that position again? And then with the calorific value of many of the alternative fuels, and with the size constraint of the ships, you're going to see more bunkering ports. They can't take in all at one time like now. So then we are going to lose our market share. It's just a very natural thing. So if I take LNG and I take the future, I think there's a lot of work that Singapore has to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very comprehensively put again. Thanks a lot. While we take maybe a question, one quick last question to Kenneth. We talked about talent and we talked about bunkering. Couldn't have left the port throughput and global hub port position, international maritime center that Singapore has become. How do you see your port position with the smart port, and how do you feel that the challenge from Shanghai, especially along these lines?
So I think, so Beng talked about talent. I think Caroline talked about bunkering. It's all revolving around innovation, digitalization, decarbonization, and talent development. These are the 3 key themes in which we all work together, both from government, SMF, SSA, and the union. I think those will be the ingredient in which we put together to serve the ecosystem. So I think, earlier we mentioned about the limitation of Singapore, given that we have not enough land, we have limited resources. I always think of this Chinese proverb that, like a sparrow, we are small, but we have all the parts and important parts. It's important that Singapore remain relevant to the ecosystem. And in the last few years, we're also trying different areas, whether it's in innovation, startup, research. I think these are new areas we want to value add to the ecosystem so that solutions are science-based. We have newer innovation from other sectors coming into maritime so that it can also excite the younger talent to come into maritime. I think that will be the space in which we'll continue. Singapore is small, but I think we must turn this smallness into our advantage so that when you meet your client, when you meet your partners, it should be just within 45 minutes or 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. And that because of the density of the ecosystem here, you should try to find as many of your partners in Singapore. I think those are key things in which we'll continue to work with the industry. There will be other maritime centers that will be coming up, and we will have good lessons to learn from. We will have a lesson that we will learn and see how we could adapt and customize for Singapore ecosystem as well.
Thank you very much. We have time for very quick one question. One question. Probably somebody who raised hand for yes, no, and maybe together. Okay, seems like no questions. Has been a very engaging discussion. I would say we started from the location, livelihood, people and leadership that makes Singapore what it is and has kept it at this position for last 11 years. It's a structure, there's a regulator, there's a connector, builder, facilitator, and aggregator in SMF, and then there is a reality check with SSA and Caroline being here for a long time. So I think it's an ecosystem that has worked, is working very, very well, but as you can see, we are not ignorant or defiant of the position. There are real threats, there are real candidates with respect to various factors, being expense being one in Singapore, attrition, talent being second, and then you have places like Dubai and China, which can pose a real threat to the position, so to say. But again, the learning attitude of Singapore is what impresses in the end the most. What Kenneth said, that we are not afraid if there are more centers, IMCs, we learn from them, and we are the sparrow. So we've got all the ingredients. We learn from all, and then we make the best product out of it because we are agile and we are small. Thank you so much for joining me this morning and launching this conference. Thanks a lot.